10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 183. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 183 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. Welcome back to all of our returning listeners, and welcome in if you're brand new to the show. What we try to do here is every week give you a short bite-sized jazz lesson for you to go and work on, give you something specific to think about for the week. So in case you are new to the show, we do have accompanying PDFs to every single one of these episodes, and you can find those on our Patreon website, where you can get to that by going to 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, and all it costs you is $3 of your hard-earned money each and every month, and for that price, you get access to 4 different PDFs every single month, and you get access to the back catalog of all 183 PDFs that we've ever put out. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get yourself signed up today for instant access to all of those. Got to give a quick shout out to all the different people that have signed up this week. Thank you to David, Samuel, Christopher, Emma, Victor, and Jeff. Thank you guys so much for joining up, supporting the podcast, keeping it coming at you every single week, and congrats on improving your jazz playing as well. All right, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's jump into today's episode. So just as a reminder, this month all of our episodes are themed. We're working towards something, and we're working towards being able to play over this tune called Last Night on the Back Porch. And we're investigating several different aspects of this tune, several different skills that you need to have to be able to play over this tune. Last week we talked about playing over chords that don't contain a seventh in them, and how we want to use the major pentatonic with that minor third present in some of those spots. This week we're going to talk about another spot in this tune, but a spot that is pretty common in a lot of jazz standards, especially the older jazz standards with a little bit more traditional harmony in them, and that is the major 4 to the minor 4 progression. We hear this a lot, particularly close to the end of tunes, approaching the final cadence. We'll hear a modulation to the 4 chord, and then that 4 chord will become a minor 4 chord, and then that minor 4 chord will lead us back into the 1 chord, and usually that sets us up for like a 1-6-2-5-1 or something like that. So this particular tune does it. An example of another jazz standard that does it is All of Me. And a ton of the older standards that we're going to start talking about on the podcast do this as well. So this is a very important, essential harmonic progression that we have to be able to play over and do something meaningful on if we expect to be successful improvisers. So we're going to talk about a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to talk about may seem obvious, but I think when it goes to the minor 4 chord, this might be something new for some of you out there. So over the major 4 chord, and in this particular tune, where we go is we go to E flat. We are in the key of B flat. So the 4 chord is an E flat chord, and we play it as an E flat 6 chord. So we already talked about what to do over these pure triads or 6 chords. We're just going to play the major pentatonic. So now the question is, what do we do when that major 6 chord turns minor? And it's a pretty simple answer, something that you're going to be able to grasp onto. But I think that a lot of people just sort of wonder, like, what are the rules when I get this minor 6 chord right next to a major 6 chord? All we're going to do is take that same exact scale, but just play a flat 3 instead of a major 3. So if I go from the major, and then I simply just turn it into minor. I think that that's going to work really well because these chords are very, very similar to each other. Literally, all I'm doing with the voicing in the left hand is changing the major third to a minor, keeping that natural six, keeping everything else basically exactly the same. So we don't have to use a completely different device to play over that. And it actually sounds really good when they're played back to back. Let me play that again for you. So that's the device that I want you to use. Now, remember, we don't always have to use the full pentatonic scale. This is really important as well. Embedded in that pentatonic scale is the major triad. And then in the case when we turn it minor, the minor triad is in there. So if you're playing and you think that maybe you're playing too much and you can't play a clear line, just simplify it to the triad, or maybe the triad with the added sixth. So all we'd be doing at that point is taking away the two, but that can make all the difference in the world. So here's something to think about when you get that major four chord to the minor four chord. Something that's really effective right at first when you're starting to work on this progression is simply just highlighting the movement from the major third to the minor third. It seems obvious, but maybe we don't think about it. Now, as you get a little bit more advanced with this stuff, you might not want to hammer that sound every single time because it comes a little bit predictable and people just know that you're going to do it every single time you get to that progression. But I think when you're first starting out, this is a really, really great way to go about it because in your playing, you're going to be reflecting the harmony exactly. As we already said, that's the only difference between the two chords, between the two voicings, is that major third going to the minor third. So you should reflect that in your single line improvisation. So what I've done for you this week on your PDF, I've given you both the major pentatonic and then the minor adaptation of that pentatonic. And then I've provided two examples for you where we are going from the 1-7 chord, the 5 of 4, into the modulation to the 4 chord, and then immediately hitting that minor 4 chord after, and then it resolves back to the 1 chord in the measure after that. So I've given you a couple of examples on how you can highlight that major third going to a minor third. Let's check those out. So the first example, what I'm basically doing is I'm using the triad with the added sixth, and in the major measure, I'm just playing up and down that chord tone outline. And then in the second measure, I'm doing the exact same thing. It's a sequence, but I'm just inserting that minor third into the minor chord. And I think that this outlines it very, very clearly. Now you'll also notice at the end of this line, I'm half step voice leading back into the 1 chord, back into the 1 chord that happens after the minor 4 chord. And this is a big part of this sound being successful as well. So what I want you to pay attention to and what I'm about to play for you is the third measure of the example, leading into the fourth measure of the example, leading into the fifth measure of the example. And really try to wrap your ears around this progression. Let's check it out. And one more time. So you can hear that's a really simple thing. I'm simply just outlining the chord, and the only difference is that I am playing with that minor third the second time over the minor chord. So the second example is also extremely simple. All I'm doing is I'm starting on the fifth of the major 4 chord, coming down the pentatonic scale, And then I'm doing that exact same thing over the second measure, but again, with that minor third. And then also this one leads pretty nicely back into the 1 chord in the last measure of the second example. So let's check this one out. And I think when you listen to the second one, you really start to get an idea of this sound, this particular device, and really, again, concentrate on the difference between the major 4 chord, the minor 4 chord, and then how that leads back into the 1. Here's example number 2. And one more time on this one. Again, listen to the major 4 to the minor 4, and then especially listen to how it leads back into the 1 chord. And then you can hear that the play along as it's fading out, it goes into that 1-6-2-5 progression, which we're definitely going to talk about as well. But these are just really simple ways to outline a very important concept. If you're not catching that major 4 to minor 4, you're definitely missing something. So study these, come up with your own, maybe write a few that use the same kind of concepts, and that'll really tell you whether you've got this down or not. And then as we go to tune of the month this month, and I actually write an etude, you're going to hear some of the stuff in the etude. So by the end of the month, you should start really playing over this tune, and it will all lead up to that final point where I'm having you work on the different sections of this individually at the beginning of the month here. And then at the end of the month, I'll transition into, okay, now just start improvising over the whole tune, and you should have some strategies that will serve you really well on this particular tune. Okay? All right, hopefully you enjoyed that. If you have any questions about this week's episode, make sure you drop them in our 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. I will definitely get back to you on any questions that you have over there, and that's a great place to be anyways. Remember to grab the PDF for this week, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, and you will find this PDF along with 182 others over there. Hope you all are having a great week. Have an awesome weekend. Get down to the practicing, and we'll see you next week with a couple new episodes. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.